Hey there, and welcome back to the Her Business Elevated podcast, where we're all about empowering women in business to reach new heights without sacrificing what matters most. And I'm your host, Demetria Zinga. My goal on the show is to encourage women entrepreneurs as you go along your business journey and to help you gain clarity as you turn your profitable passion into a plan of action. And I am beyond excited to dive in today's episode. So welcome to episode 61. So friends, listen, I've been there and I know what it's like to juggle business goals, family, and maybe even just a little bit of me time while trying to grow your brand and make some noise in your industry. Over the past 2 decades, I have been doing online business and a variety of it. So I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur that loves dabbling in a lot of different things, from website design to content marketing and SEO and after school tutoring and teaching online. I've done a bunch of things. I've also created a lot of digital products. And all these things that I'm doing scratches that itch that I have to just show up in the world in a way that's most authentic for me, but helps me to figure out actually what I want to do and what makes me the happiest. I do realize that as I get older, I want to take something with me that makes me really happy and allows me to position myself to have multiple streams of income. So whether I choose to work a part-time, full-time, work in corporate, work in an agency, or work for myself, I always want to have this online business that I can fall back on that can be something that helps to provide a source of passive income for me and for my family. So that's what I've worked on as I've raised kids over the past 20 years. I now have a 22-year-old and a almost 17-year-old. And this is just what my life has been. And I've even used the word mompreneur over the years, or a mom entrepreneur, because my identity had really just been centered around raising kids, homeschooling my kids. And so with that mindset, I considered myself number one, a mom or a parent, and number two, an entrepreneur. So I always wanted to make sure that I was putting my kids first. But now I'm in a stage of life where my kids are no longer babies, and I have one adult kid and one teenager. And so my life has opened up a new space for me to consider different things about what I can do and how I can use my time that makes sense for me now that I'm moving into another decade of my life in a couple of years. I say all that super long intro just to kind of share a bit about my background for those of you who may be new to this podcast and maybe didn't listen to episode number 1, 60-something episodes ago, and just want to give you a little catch up on what makes me tick and what makes me do what I do and why I'm passionate about it. So all these years that I've been an entrepreneur, I have been a solopreneur, which is another term that I like to use. Solopreneur meaning I'm doing a lot of this on my own. For the most part, I have worked with teams. I have had to hire and outsource a few things here and there, and I have managed teams. But for the most part, I'm working on my own. So solopreneur means that I have done a lot of the work by myself. And I understand what it's like to not have a budget, to hire and outsource a lot of people to help you with your online business goals. And one of the main things you have to have online is your content. Your content is what drives your business. Yes, you have to make sales. That is the end result, is you've got to make those sales. But in order to create that conversation, create the community, and in order to keep the traffic flowing to your business online, to your storefront, your virtual storefront, you really do have to have content that speaks to your audience. So one of the things that I love doing is helping solopreneurs to figure out a strategy they can use to create content that drives the type of traffic they want and makes connections with the type of audience they wish to have in their business, the type of client they want to have. So in order to create content for them, you have to have a strategy and fit it into your schedule. So whether that content is for your podcast, for your blog, or for your socials, you need to have a strategy of how you're going to use that content to bring eyeballs back to what you're doing and allow people to see that what you offer is important and needed, something that they need. And I know that for many of us, the dream of having a full team to handle that content creation can feel just a bit out of reach. But here's the thing, creating compelling, high quality content does not have to be a huge production or a big line item in your budget. Today, we're talking all about DIY content creation, how to make content that pops without a big crew or fancy tools. Before we settle in, I want to shamelessly plug my content strategy and SEO boost services, which you can find over at my website at demetriazinga.com. And you'll hear me sharing more about SEO and content strategy on this podcast because I believe it's just that important for your online business success. I also design websites to help you get started if you don't have the branding done yet and you don't have an online presence. But for many of us, we already have an online presence. We already have that brand, that website, and we're just wondering what to do next and where to go from there. And that's where I believe content strategy comes in. It's a very, very important part of your business plan. Knowing what to say on your website, knowing what to say on your blog, how to say it, how often to say it. Having a strategy that grows your business through keyword strategy, that can make a huge difference for you. And it can save you money in the long run because you're not constantly purchasing ads or having to hire a team to help you to make your business run. So here's where I always invite you at the beginning of the show to grab your coffee and your tea because I'm all about getting comfortable when you're thinking business and planning and strategizing. And I know that's how we roll. For you business women that are listening today, I know a lot of us tend to unwind and feel more comfortable when we have something that we love to drink, to sip on. And that's why I invite you to do that. I want you to feel comfortable when you're listening to the show. I don't want you to feel like this is all corporate speak or business talk and that you have to put on your business hat. I want you to feel cozy and comfortable and relaxed because really, when you're running your online business, you should feel just as comfortable. It shouldn't be a scary feat. It shouldn't feel out of your league, at least for the most part. There will be some things that will stretch you as you learn new processes, as you learn new skills. It will stretch you a little bit, but it shouldn't feel overwhelming and give you anxiety. So that's why I always like to invite you to grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, or whatever your favorite beverage is and listen into the show so that you feel relaxed. So here we go. First, we're going to start off by talking about why DIY content creation is so important. And it's DIY because, of course, you're going to be doing all this for the most part by yourself unless you hire that team. So we're going to take it from the perspective of you're doing the work. So let's talk about why this content creation can actually be a good thing for your brand. When you're creating your own content, you have this direct line from your heart and your mind to your audience. There's no filters, no middlemen or middlewomen. It's all you. Your audience connects with your personality, your values, and your voice in a real and authentic way. Plus, as small business owners, we're often closer to our audience and we know what resonates with them. So while a big team might be nice, sometimes DIY means the content feels more real and more genuine. Now, don't get me wrong, this approach can take time and I'm all about saving time wherever we can. So let's dive into some of the strategies I use to keep my content creation efficient. I'm not perfect with it, but I do my best to be as efficient as possible in whatever season of life I'm in. And also things that I do to make it budget friendly and high impact. So let's talk about setting up a simple content creation system. And the first thing we've got to talk about, of course, is systems. Because as much as DIY content can be free flowing, having a plan is going to make it so much easier. So let's start with one of my favorite tools, and that is the content calendar. I've talked about the content calendar in a previous episode. I may have touched on it briefly in episode 49, where I gave some tips for balancing a business while working a 9-to-5. So yeah, having a content calendar is crucial. I know it sounds basic, but hear me out. A content calendar is like a map for your content journey, and it helps you see what you're posting, when, and where. And it doesn't have to be complicated. So you start by choosing just one or two platforms you'll focus on, maybe your blog, maybe, of course, your blog, because we want to make sure that's home base. But maybe you also want to add in an Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok or something. But look at your overall business goals for the month and break those down into weekly or bi-weekly themes. What will you be talking about every week or every other week and so forth. And here's a tip: using tools like Trello, which I used to love using, but now I also use Google Calendar as well. There are other things. Notion is another one that I love. Use these to organize your posts. And personally, I love a good digital calendar, but a physical planner also works just as well if you're more hands-on. So write out your themes and add in those specific content ideas. The goal here is to avoid the scramble of what am I posting today at the last minute? And then you want to move towards a streamlined plan where you can stay consistent without getting overwhelmed. That's how I grew my first blog, which is a homeschool blog for moms of faith called Christian Homeschool Moms. And I started that blog in 2012 and was able to grow it exponentially over the next couple of years after that. I watched the growth go from 0 to like almost 6,000 page views every single month within just a few short years. Yes, it took some time, and no, it wasn't an overnight thing. And yes, it has grown even since then. But the thing is that it took a commitment on my part, and I had to set aside time. As I was raising my little babies at the time, I had to set aside time to do my blogging, to plan out my blogging content and my strategy for each month. I had content pillars, I had themes, things that I knew I wanted to share on my blog with my audience, and a way to share that with them as well. So not just blogging about it, not just writing blog posts, but also sharing with my audience in a different format. So that came by way of YouTube videos, which is where I got most of my interaction, and also my email list, which we can talk about at another time too, because that is a super important part of your strategy for connecting with your audience. But you do need to have a plan of what you'll be talking about in general from month to month if you have certain themes. So for that blog, I had themes for each month. I know some months were, for example, November and December, I focused a lot on holiday content and providing home educators a way to really enjoy the holidays with podcast episodes that would help them get into the holiday spirit, help them with lesson plans for their children during the holidays. And then for the new year, I always provided sort of a back to school planning momentum for homeschool moms, helping them to get kind of in the mindset of getting back into the back to school mode, just like I would in August, which is generally the month that we go back to school. And then in between, I would focus on celebrations of holidays like Easter and Passover, some religious holidays, as well as Valentine's or summer months. We do some summer themed homeschool planning ideas, things like that. So whatever your specific theme is, or whatever your specific niche is in your audience, you'll want to focus your content on what works for them from month to month and plan your ideas out for what you want to be posting. Next, I'm going to talk about some time-saving tips for your DIY content creation. How can you save time? So now that we've got the calendar rolling, let's get into those tips of how to save time. Because listen, we don't have hours on end to pour into content creation, right? So here are just a few tricks that I've learned along the way. My first tip for you is to batch your content creation. This is one of the things that I shared a lot on an older podcast that I used to run called the Mompreneurs and Heels podcast, which is now pod faded. It's no longer something that I keep up, but on that show, I talked a lot about blogging, and I'll be talking more about it here on this show because I think it's such an important part of building your online business. And for sure, batching is absolutely your best friend because you'll want to make sure that you condense the time that you are working on one thing so you don't have to break up your train of thought. Right? So pick one day a week or even a couple of hours to focus solely on creating content for the upcoming week. Take all your photos for your Instagram or for whatever you're using for your blog, write all your captions, record your videos in one sitting, record your audios in one sitting, and you'll be amazed at how much more efficient this makes the process. So for writing blog posts, sit down and maybe write a couple of different ones at one time. So maybe you have enough for 1 month. If you're only planning to write one blog post per week, 1 or 2, let's say 2, you can do 8 blogs. Maybe you can write 4 posts in one day, right? And then you're done for the entire month. Or maybe you do break it up into 2 different days and you write 4 blog posts on the first day and 4 on the second day, and you're done for the entire month. if you're planning to do 8 posts per month. But know how much content you want to publish, get on a schedule and center your schedule around what you know you want to do for your business. So this way you're prioritizing your business tasks and it fits directly into your life. Another thing you'll want to do is using templates. This is going to expedite the process for you and really make life so much easier. And I'm telling you, templates are where it's at, especially with free tools like Canva. I cannot live my business life without Canva because Canva has tons of customizable templates for social media graphics, for blog headers, Instagram stories, you name it. It's all in Canva. There is a free version if you're thinking about budget. So no worries. Canva does have a free version that you can use. You do get so much more benefit by paying for Pro Tools, which is what I'm using currently. But again, it is something that you don't want to miss out on. You need to have something like Canva. Start by picking a few templates that match your brand's aesthetic and stick with those templates. You can also create your own branding if you're using the Pro version. You can create your own brand boards and make sure that all of your images and your graphics fit with your brand. And this not only saves you time, but it also helps you to build a cohesive look across all of your platforms. So I do this for my YouTube thumbnails, for my Instagram posts and reels. I'm really particular about making sure that my branding matches for each different brand. Of course, my homeschool brand is different than my digital marketing and web design brand. So those are 2 different brand boards and color palettes that I'm using. So I love that Canva allows me to differentiate between all of my different brands and those different aesthetics. So I can just pull up that brand board when I'm ready and use that to create all of my graphics and assets for each brand. So that's how I'm able to function really with creating content that matches each one is by using Canva. And my next tip for you regarding saving time with content creation is to recycle and repurpose. Don't feel like every piece of content has to be brand new because one blog post can become several social media posts, or it can become a short video or even a series of Instagram stories. Just repurposing that content saves time and reinforces your message. For example, if you were to write a blog post and then you pulled out just a few quotes or statistics and you make them into social media graphics, that's one way you can repurpose your content. And if it feels that like that's too much and you don't feel like focusing on your social media, you don't have to. Focus on the most important thing. Again, your website. I truly believe, after having been in online business for almost 20 years, it's your website, it's your home base, it's your blog. That is most important because that's where you want traffic flowing to as opposed to your socials. Pick one social media if you'd like to have that extra place where you are sharing the content that you already have on your blog, and then let that be what you focus on. Maybe just your website, which would be essentially your blog where you're creating content there, and one social media outlet where you can bring eyeballs back to your blog. Okay, but recycle. So every time you create a piece of content for your blog, think about ways you can share bits of that content through your social platform. Now, if you want to have more than one social platform, then by all means go for it. It's just more opportunity for people to be able to see what you're doing and for you to broaden your audience and make more connections. But it's also more work for you to create that content without a team. So just keep that in mind. So our next segment, we're going to get into some essential and free tools for DIY content creation. And in the last episode 60, we talked about free SEO tools to help your website get noticed. So this is kind of similar in that way, but we're not talking about SEO this time. Now we're just talking about some tools you can use to help bring your content creation to a different level. We want to upgrade how you create content. And I've already mentioned Canva. So this is my go-to for creating those beautiful graphics without needing a design background. You can easily make everything, like I said, from social media posts to flyers to ebooks. It's all in Canva. As someone who really loves design, Years ago, I would have recommended that you get into Adobe Photoshop or Premiere or something like that, Photoshop for design especially. But today, I would never recommend that. Just go straight to Canva. It's so easy. My next thing for you, free tools, definitely use Unsplash and Pexels. And these are ways that you can get high quality photos that you can use across your social media or blogs. And they are free because not everyone has the time or the budget to create custom photography, right? So check out Unsplash and Pexels. Next, Google Workspace. And I'm just talking about Sheets, Docs, Google Drive. I use Google Docs to draft and store all of my content ideas. I'm also using, to be fair, another tool called Notion. I love Notion, but I think for me, Google Drive and Docs is where it's at. It's easy to access everything from my phone if I'm on the go, and I just have everything already organized by folder, so I know where to find my information. But I would recommend Notion for the brain dumping and for kind of mapping things out. So I do like to use both of them. And I also will recommend a tool called Later. If you do a lot of social media, Later is a free scheduling tool that lets you plan and preview your Instagram posts. So you can schedule content ahead of time and it can be a huge game changer. And I think it does a little bit more than Instagram. I think you can connect your Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, your YouTube and some other things as well. So depending on what plan you purchase with Later, you can have access to that. So let's bring it all together. We've covered why DIY content creation can be so powerful, how to set up a simple content calendar. We've talked about some tips to save and some tools to keep it all running smoothly. But here's my last piece of advice. Consistency over perfection. You want to show up regularly for your audience, even if it's just once or twice a week. The more you post, the more confident you're going to feel, and the better your content will get over time. There will be, granted, seasons of your life where you cannot post anything maybe for a couple of months. And when those seasons happen, when that happens to you, it's okay. It's not over yet. When you come back, everything will be waiting and you can get back into the momentum, but it will just take a little time to gear back up, right? But DIY content creation may seem challenging at first, and it's because you're getting used to doing something that you haven't been used to doing. But once you start rolling, it really becomes a part of your flow. And remember, you're not just building a business, you're building a brand. You're connecting with real people who want to see you succeed. And they also want to succeed along with you because they're on the journey alongside you. Whatever you're offering to your audience is something they obviously need and want, and which is why they're following you, which is why they're on your email list. It's why they're reading your content, they're listening, they're watching. So they need you. And you have to realize that you have got what it takes to provide the quality that your audience needs. You can do this. Remember again, the more you post, the more confident you'll feel, and the better your content will get over time. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Her Business Elevated. I would love to hear from you. I would love for you to share this episode with a friend who's also on her business journey. And if you've tried out any of these DIY content strategies, again, I'd love to hear from you to see what you're up to. I did mention my website earlier for SEO strategy for website design, and that is demetriazinga.com. But I do also want to put a plug in for the website that this particular podcast is named for, and it is herbusinesselevated.com. And that's where you'll find plenty more blog posts that have not been there since the last time I talked to you about this website. You'll find more content there that will help you with your online business strategy, getting your business running, and being successful with creating content that your audience loves. So I'd love to bring you back over there. You can also find show notes for this podcast over at herbusinesselevated.com. And there will be more content there in the near future as I plan to roll out some additional courses that I haven't released yet, something that I've been talking about doing for a long time. And I've been creating courses, but just not releasing them because of perfectionism. So we're getting past that. That's one of my things that I'm working on, and I'll share more about that with you in another episode. But I'm excited because this holidays season is coming up. I'm recording this in November 2024. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all the sales. So I will have an offering for you coming up shortly. And so stay tuned. I plan to be back in another week as opposed to 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I'm trying to do a bit more podcasting in the next couple of weeks for this show. So stay tuned to Her Business Elevated, and I will talk to you guys in another week or so. Thanks for listening. Bye.